In the beginning, God created the world and everything in it, and God called it very good. It was filled with beauty and life and perfect peace between all living things, including humans, who were made as God's image bearers. But not everything in God's very good world was perfect. In Genesis 3, we were introduced to the serpent, the physical embodiment of the spiritual reality of evil in the world. The serpent told Eve and Adam to break God's rule and eat from the tree of the knowing good and evil. This temptation was about much more than fruit. Eve and Adam chose to listen to a voice that was not God's voice. They chose to trust a voice that said it was speaking for God, but it was not. Adam and Eve chose the fruit of the tree from knowing good and evil, and in doing so, they chose to know for themselves instead of trusting God. And this was the first time that evil gained a foothold in the good world that God created. And when it did, the abundant goodness of the relationship between God and humanity was broken. Adam and Eve chose to be their own rulers, and God gave them their wish. And now that evil was in the world with them. This was not an inevitable tragedy, a choice was made. And in Genesis 4, we see humanity continue in this choice. Adam and Eve are out in the world, no longer in the safety of the garden. Adam lays with Eve and she conceives. She has Cain. With God's help, she says, I have made a human. And then she has a second boy, Abel. Now, many years pass. Abel is a herdsman and Cain is a farmer. And we know how it goes with brothers, right? Always competing, wanting to be the favorite. Rivalry is in their blood. The story starts innocently enough. One day they bring their offerings to God. And at first glance, it would appear that each brother brought what he had, but God did not see it this way. Farmer Cain brings God some of the produce from his farm. It was an ordinary gift. Shepherd Abel also brings an offering, but is a choice cut of meat from the firstborn animals of his herd. Abel brought the best gift that he could. God likes Abel and his offering, but Cain and his offering didn't get God's favor. Now Cain had a choice. He could be humble and accept that he had been caught doing the bare minimum. He could ask God how to do better, but instead, Cain digs in. Cain becomes angry and loses his temper and begins to sulk. God saw Cain struggling and spoke to him, Why are you sulking? Why this tantrum? You will always be accepted if you do what is right. But if you don't do what is right, sin is lying in wait for you, ready to pounce. It will get the better of you. You have to master it, Cain. But Cain didn't listen to the voice of God, the voice that said, choose what is right because you belong with me. Choose to trust me, not the sin in the world around you. Cain heard other voices louder, the voice of envy that his brother had bested him, the voice of loneliness that no one else could understand what he was going through. The voice of anger that said he deserved what Abel had too, and he could take it for himself if he wanted. The voice of shame that said he was not enough. So Cain said to his brother, Abel, let's go take a walk in the field. Abel followed him out as he had done hundreds of times. But this time, Cain was listening to the voice of evil, and it cried louder than God's wisdom. Cain had nursed the bitterness and the anger and the shame until it had grown into something out of control. until it had grown into something that is quite disproportionate to what had happened. So while they were in the field, Cain attacks his brother Abel and kills him. God said to Cain, "Where is Abel, your brother?" And Cain replies, "How should I know? Am I responsible for my brother?" God says, "What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is calling to me from the ground. From now on, you will get nothing but curses from this ground. You'll be driven from the ground that has opened its mouth to receive the blood of your murdered brother. You will continue to farm the ground, but it will no longer give you the best crops. You will be a restless wanderer on the earth." Cain said to God, "This punishment is too much. I can't handle this. You've thrown me off the land and I can never again face you. I'll be a homeless wanderer on earth, and whoever finds me will kill me." But God told him, "No. Anyone who kills Cain will pay for it 7 times over." God put a mark on Cain to protect him so that no one who met him would kill him. And so Cain left the presence of God and lived in the no man's land east of Eden. This is a really violent and difficult story to hear. It isn't a story of good versus evil, and it's not a story of an inevitable tragedy. It is a story of the raw and painful side of humanity. A choice was made. This is a story about the complexity of human emotions, envy, rage, loneliness that can lead to violence. Do you remember fighting with your siblings or your friends growing up? I fought all the time with my brother and sister, several times a day. And inevitably, we would get in trouble, and my mother or my father would have to give us consequences for our behavior. And every time, even though it had probably already happened earlier that day, and the day before, and the week before, I would be outraged and shocked. But I didn't do anything. I didn't know. Well, I didn't hear you. But she was breathing my air. Children are very gifted at playing the martyr. We don't repent or ask forgiveness. Instead, we dig our heels in and make excuses. And when we look at this story in Genesis 4, we are not only learning about God, we are learning about our own humanity and the sin that has now entered the world. Sin that can so twist our hearts that we can deny our own brokenness. We will run or hide or make excuses or lash out instead of taking responsibility. Just like Cain, we play the victim. This punishment is too much to bear. But the truth is, how we respond sets us on a path back to God or a path away from God. This is not about our basic shortcomings or how we could have said something better. It's about the sin that separates and what it does to the human heart. When Cain asked God, "Am I my brother's keeper? Am I his babysitter?" Cain is continuing down a path that Adam and Eve started on. My brother is not my responsibility, God. That's not who I am. Why would you ask me that? And I think we often wonder the same thing today. What responsibility do I have to the people around me? Because after this murder, everything is different. Every relationship that Cain has is fractured. His relationship with his brother is gone. His relationship with his parents is changed. They know that he murdered his brother, and now he will have to leave and live somewhere apart from his family. There's no more family dinners. His relationship with God has shifted. God warned him that this would happen, and he ignored it. Cain allowed his humanity to get the best of him. Even his relationship with himself. Because what does life look like when you come to the awareness of the evil that you have chosen to participate in? His family now has to navigate through the grief and trauma because of his actions. Cain himself has to deal with the guilt and shame and trauma of his own actions, and they will navigate it separately now. What was Cain's responsibility to the people around him? There are no simple answers to this story, but it offers us the opportunity to ask ourselves some difficult questions about violence in our own communities, because violence is a part of our world. The last 2 weeks have given us plenty of violence to ponder. Charlie Kirk, Desmond Hawley, Trey Reed, Corey Zukadis, just a few names to get us started here in our own country. And even here in these pews, there's probably a massive range of emotions when I say those 4 names: anger, doubt, grief, confusion. And in the aftermath of such violence, what is our responsibility to the people around us? How do we live in a world where the violence seems to keep coming? In a world where we wonder if we are safe too? What this says about me, and how do I function going forward with what I now know? How do I protect myself? How do we repair the relationships that feel fractured now, especially when I can't see eye to eye with my friends and my family, and the country feels torn in half? And I say again, there are no simple answers to this story, but there is an invitation for all of us to change the question. Perhaps instead of asking why,